Hey, my friends, it's Dave Slomka, and welcome to a new episode of Dave's I Believe in You. Every 2 weeks, I release another podcast where you can find expert guidance from the sources I've been learning from and a community of people like yourself who want to grow and change. So let me be your encourager. With God, your life can be better. You can change. Your best days are still ahead of you. I believe in you. If you're finding these podcasts helpful, then hit the like button, give me some stars, leave a comment. And if you're on social media, then be sure to tag me or direct message me at daveslomka.com so that I can say hi. I'd love to hear from you. Let me encourage you to listen closely. Maybe take some notes for yourself so you remember the insights of personal growth that strike you. And then share this podcast with 3 friends and help them grow and move forward in their lives and make a difference in our world. And with that, let's get started. Presumably, you are wanting to get better in some area or areas of your life. And if you're listening to this podcast, then you have some goal in mind, something you would like to change. And you're open to new ideas and the encouragement that would help you to make that change. But we all get stuck sometimes. Maybe you're overwhelmed by the amount of change in your life, or you're daunted by the number of goals that you want to work on. Perhaps you're just feeling worn out in this perpetual struggle in life, not enjoying any wins and really feeling tired. Well, in this podcast, we get some excellent ground floor and nitty-gritty help, simple ideas and thoughts that will help move you forward and make some progress, get some momentum going, and see some gains in your life. I know personally when I start to see success, like start making gains in my life, that it inspires me about other areas of my life. In habits lingo, something can become a keystone habit that impacts the rest of your life. And that's why we're looking at Jon Acuff's podcast, All It Takes Is a Goal, number 24, and his interview with Greg Sankey today. There are 2 things to love about this podcast. The first is that Jon Acuff is all about growth through goals. He is a New York Times bestselling author of 7 books, including his most recent Soundtracks, The Surprising Solution to Overthinking. It's been published in over 20 languages, and his work is critically acclaimed, and people love it. And when he's not writing, he can be found on stage as one of Inc.'s top 100 leadership speakers. And then second, Greg Sankey brings some fantastic leadership lessons that we all need to know, because leadership is, first of all, leading ourselves, and then influencing and leading other people that we interact with regularly. People we interact with at work, at home, in the neighborhood, at church, at the barbers or hairdressers. And then these are thoughts and lessons that can help all of us to take steps to break through some barriers and get better. Now, Greg has been the commissioner of the SEC, the Southeastern Conference for College Sports, since 2015. But he's been involved with college sports since 1987. For this podcast, I'm going to pick some powerful thoughts that really impacted me, and I believe they impact you as well. The first is this: don't let life just happen to you, shape it for yourself. Sometimes we find ourselves in emergency situations that we didn't choose, like in a pandemic. And those moments break the rhythm of your life, perhaps a rhythm that you've had for years. It did for college sports, and I know that it did for me personally. And in those situations, you need to get more intentional instead of going with the flow. For the SEC and many organizations, pivoting was necessary, and it required quicker changes and lots of communication. The cadence of things in your life needs to change. How often you meet with people, communicate, and what you do needs to change. The things you did at the beginning of the pandemic were probably not sustainable. You're going to burn yourself out if you keep doing them. So keep pivoting until you find that middle ground. Honestly, life has changed and we are not going back. There is a new normal that is forming for your life if it hasn't already. Don't let it happen to you. Instead, shape it for yourself. Now, Greg talked about one aspect of shaping your life being the need for life-giving hobbies or something that refuels your inner tank. During the lockdowns, the gyms shut down. It's gone. So now what? For Greg, this changed his very structured and disciplined day. And he had to decide, am I going to be swept away or am I going to continue being active? So Greg made the decision to pivot and went back to running 35 minutes a day. No gym necessary. His goal was to keep moving, so he committed to not miss 2 consecutive days. Now, John highlighted the ideas of keeping the rules simple. It wasn't about distance, it wasn't about speed, it was about consistency. And consistency is something that came up continually throughout the whole podcast, and we're going to get back to it. Greg also mentioned the mental health benefit in keeping active and how much that mattered. Running gives him a distraction to think and to process, and while he runs, he's listening to music and he's listening to podcasts. And I find the same is true for me. When I run, I get great physical and mental health benefits, and when I stop, then I lose both. Another example of pivoting for Greg was that he used to start the day with reading for 45 minutes after working out. This was pre-COVID. Now he does it at the end of the day to transition to sleep. It's about finding what works for you. Now, this took me back to the book Slight Edge I've mentioned before, and the idea of reading just 10 pages a day. And if we did just 10 pages a day, you would read about a dozen books a year. And if you're reading great books that help inform you and uplift you, then the impact on your life could be huge. Now, I'm a great believer in the importance of reading. Leaders are learners, but sometimes I need to pivot based on my time and remind myself to just be consistent with 10 pages instead of dropping it altogether. The second thing Greg highlighted was the value of feedback and introspection. Now, we become more self-aware through our own reflecting and introspection, and also allowing people close to us to speak into our lives. And so John asked the question, what is your process for self-analysis and introspection? And Greg responded with his running routine, and that there needs to be time for introspection and self-evaluation built into your life. But Greg also talked about the importance of having people in your life. By choosing not to live in community so that you're on your own, no one can give you the truth. And you're going to miss out, and your growth is going to be limited. Greg gave the example of a story of playing baseball in college. He was apparently a second stringer, but he got to play one game and he hit really well. And his expectation was that since he played so well, he'd be a starter for the next game. But the coach didn't start him. And so Greg got mopey and depressed, and his coach pulled him aside after that next game and said, "You have no idea how important you are to your team. When you shut down, you hurt our team." And in fact, the coach said if they had lost that next game, it would have been partially Greg's fault. Greg had influence on the team, and by shutting down and withdrawing from the people, he hurt the team. You impact people in your life, and when you make choices about how you're going to respond, and it can be negatively, it affects them too. Greg was challenged to meet higher expectations and not shut down from the team. And so John said, how did you receive that feedback in the moment? How was that? And Greg admitted that it was hard in the moment. Hearing that he didn't meet those expectations was tough. But going forward, he never shut down again in that team setting. So you may not see how important you are to your organization or to the people who are around you, but even if you don't see it, you are. Also, you need to get good people around you when making decisions. Wise counsel. Allow people into your life that you give permission to give you feedback. It can make a significant difference in your life and help you move past moments that could otherwise keep you stuck. The third idea that impacted me was Greg's process for reading a book in order to get the very most out of it. So that you don't just, read it over and forget. In fact, he said he doesn't like to read a book without a highlighter. He highlights lots. Now, personally, I like to highlight in my reading apps a lot. And Greg pointed out if you consume something 3 times, you seem to internalize it. And so he would read and highlight, and then he would kind of type up his highlighted notes. And as an aside, he eventually got his kids to type up the highlights, and they ended up getting the best parts of the great books he was reading. They actually still talk about them decades later. And then finally, you slowly distill the notes to kind of the significant learnings, and then go back to the really filtered notes, and you pull out a few quotes. Now, I'm still thinking through what that looks like for listening to a podcast instead of reading. Perhaps I just need to make sure I take notes on my podcast and then go back and highlight those notes and continue on from there. Distilling the notes forces you to find what you have to remember from that book. And then Greg shared that he has 4 books that he recommends everyone read. And he even had them printed up on a card to hand out to students and at businesses and organizations where he's talking. Would you like to know what the 4 books are that he recommends? All right, I'll give them to you. Number 1 is The Life You've Always Wanted by John Ortberg. Great book. Number 2 was Be Quick But Don't Hurry by Andrew Hill. Not familiar with that one. Number 3 was the Old Testament book of Ecclesiastes. Fantastic. I read it every year. And number 4 was Do Over by John Acuff, which I've just started reading now. The final thought that really impacted me was that consistency is a key to success in life. Now, John recognized that people struggle with consistency, and so what is the key? How do you do this? Well, first it's about the mindset of don't quit, be consistent, but then don't get caught up in the need for perfection, because perfection is not reality. And then Greg brought up the quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson, "A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds." In other words, consistency in some things is good, but when that thing is no longer beneficial or helpful, it actually becomes a negative worry that doesn't produce results. Instead, Greg talked about finding the right consistency. It's about going back to the goal. Does it have to be going to the gym, or can it be running? Does it have to be running, or is it really just getting out to move? Now, this thought reminds me of Craig Rochelle's comment that something is better than nothing. If we wait for perfection, then we can get paralyzed. Instead, focus on the most basic goal, or the why, for what you want to do, and then do something. In the book Atomic Habits, James Clear talked about the goal of getting fit and how hard it was to get to the gym. And he suggested, look, break down the goal into consistency about going to the gym. So take the habit and then do what you can just for a couple of minutes or so. Start easy with something like just putting on your gym clothes and then taking them off for a week or so. And then just drive to the gym and then drive home for a few weeks, nothing else. But don't let yourself try to do more because you don't want to break the consistency. And then just work out for 5 minutes at the gym and go home. Build the consistency, and then you can build the habit. So Greg talked about the need to set the right parameters, the right consistency in order to keep moving forward even when it's difficult. Then your momentum can carry you through. You want to acknowledge the reality of what's going on around you, but set the right parameters. Right now, what's important? And then allow the momentum to carry you along as you get consistent. Consistency is what pays off in the long term, not speed. It's the slight edge working for you, kind of like compound interest. Now, I've discovered the power of getting started and staying consistent, and also the unfortunate power of stopping and instead being consistent in not doing and staying comfortable. And that actually becomes the slight edge down instead of up, what I call the slow fade. Now, Greg added that if you don't start now, you never will. Timing matters. When opportunities present themselves, go. Don't wait for later. Take the opportunity now. It's the old adage, the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago, and the second best time is today. Right? Starting years ago would have been so helpful and put you further ahead. But if you start today, then years from now, you will be ahead. So just take it small and slow. You can move forward in your life. Now, in 2 weeks, we're going to be listening to Donald Miller's Story Brand podcast and finding out about life purpose and fulfilling it. It is a great resource for goal setting and helping you move forward in your life. I believe that God has a good plan for your life and that He wants to help you achieve it. And so check back in 2 weeks. We're going to learn more all about it. Until then, if you want more detailed notes, then go to daveslomka.com and subscribe. Make sure to share the podcast with 3 people. Let's share the encouragement around and show others that we believe in them too. There are people in your life who want to make a change in their lives, and they want to make a difference in our world. So support them in their journey by sharing this podcast. Please leave a comment or review. It is a big help to me. Every day is a good day to grow and change. I believe in you. With God in your life, anything is possible. So go out there and make that change.